Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk to you about the interdimensional gorilla hypothesis. Now this is something I've been working on for a long time in my own brain, and I just hope that it goes down in history, at least as legitimate as flat Earth or donut Earth, at least somewhere in between those two. This is a theory upon which I have been working a very long time, upon which I have gathered a mountain of evidence that when presented to you, you will no longer be able to deny the fact that gorillas are our interdimensional protectors. So obviously you know what I'm talking about. I'm referencing the tragic event of May 28, 2016, when our boy Harambe was sadly killed after a young child fell into his enclosure. Now there's a lot that has been said about Harambe, more than I'm qualified to say. I'm pulling different things out of this situation here. You know, a lot has been said on the internet about how this event somehow upset the fabric of space-time. Something happened when our boy Harambe was shot and killed that altered the very essence of the reality of the universe. Some sort of change happened. People claim everything from transitioning to a different dimension, a different world, to upsetting the chaos gods of the universe who are raining down destruction on us. I think we can all agree that ever since that day on May 28th, 2016, the world has not been the same. The energy around us just feels different. And I decided to get to the bottom of why. I want to take you back to another similar incident, but one that ended quite differently. I want to tell you a story about Binti Dua, a gorilla that lived in the Brookfield, Illinois zoo. This gorilla was female, and her name in Swahili meant daughter of sunshine. Obviously, this was a lovely gorilla soul and a lovely gorilla all around, and she proved it to the world when in 1996, a 3-year-old boy fell into her enclosure. She went and protected this 3-year-old boy with her own baby on her back the whole time and made sure that this boy was safe. Both the gorilla and the human survived this altercation, unlike the events of May 28, 2016. Now there's something more interesting about Binti Dua's experience, but I'll get to that later, because I want to tell you about something that also happened in Basel, Switzerland. At the Zoo Basel, there was another gorilla who had another similar experience. This gorilla was named Jambo, which in Swahili means hello. In 1986, a 5-year-old boy by the name of Levin Merritt also fell into this gorilla's enclosure. Now, the things went kind of differently as well, because Jambo also protected this 5-year-old boy. In fact, stood over him and was reported to have defended him from the other gorillas in the enclosure. This incident also resulted in a happy ending where the young boy's life was safe, and Jambo went on to live a long, relatively long, happy gorilla life until he died in September of 1992. Now, Jambo had every reason to react violently because Jambo was actually captured from the wild in 1950 and sold for $10,000 by the people that captured him. So he had every reason to hate humans, but instead he decided to protect this young boy and potentially affected the entire universe. I don't know if you're seeing a pattern here, but it seems like there are multiple occurrences in the last 100 years of gorillas and humans crossing paths in zoos, and usually they end well. Up until, unfortunately, 2016, when everything changed. Now again, I'm not here to guilt anybody that was involved in the Harambe story. There are experts that know much more than I do about the specific situation. I'm talking about this, taking it from the interdimensional angle here, because that's the mystery we're trying to solve. Is there something to do with gorillas and our temporal space-time continuum sort of thing that is tied together? I'm convinced the gorillas are the guardians of our universe. I have lots and lots of evidence to suggest this, but the main one is you probably didn't realize that the dates that I was giving you were significant. For example, Binti Dua saved that young boy's life in 1992. She was also born in 1988. There's something interesting about those years that's also interesting about the year 2016 that Harambe was killed. They're all leap years. Now, I don't know if you've noticed what I have, but it seems like something happens every 4 years. There's sort of an in-between space. Maybe an opportunity opens up to change our reality, and these gorillas are instrumental in deciding what happens on those days. Now, the Jambo incident didn't necessarily happen in a leap year. It happened in 1986, but he did die in 1992 which was a leap year? Was this him departing from our reality into the next in that in-between time? Let's talk a little bit about leap years. Now, we understand the need for them because the average human year is not 365 days, it's 365 and about a quarter days. So we need to, every 4 years, adjust. And then every 100 years, we skip the leap year unless that 100 years is divisible by 400, like the year 2000. This is a system that we have devised as humans in the Gregorian calendar, ones that use the Gregorian calendar, to keep ourselves in line with the solstices and the seasons. But what strikes me as particularly interesting is the idea that we have an extra day. We call it February 29th simply because it's the one that comes after the 28th and before March 1st, but for a long time it didn't have that name. It was simply an extra day. Some cultures would call it February 28th again, some would call it March 1st before the March 1st, but instead of having 2 days, they settled on February 29th. But some cultures just had it as an extra day, an in-between day that time could not touch, and that maybe served as a rift between space and time itself. Now, as I was researching leap years, I want you to know that this was inspired by the fact that I picked up on this discrepancy before anybody opened my eyes to it. I already felt that leap years had a sort of power to them. Seeing what happened to the world in 2016 and the descent that it took, and seeing what happened at the bottom 4 years later in 2020, I wonder what now is happening in 2024, but I'll get to that in only a moment. I want to tell you about some events that have happened on Leap Day in recent history. Now, recent history dates back a while. There are negative events and more positive ones. One of the negative events includes Christopher Columbus tricking the native tribes into obedience by saying his god would destroy the moon on February 29th because he knew that a solar eclipse was going to happen. Another thing that happened on a famous February 29th was the first warrants of the Salem witch trial were issued. Davy Jones, not the squid-faced person from our recent movies, or even from our folklore, the singer from the popular boy band The Monkees, died in 2012 on February 29th. If you happen to be familiar with the day the music died, in which Ritchie Valens, Buddy Holly, and Big Bopper all died in a plane crash, that did not happen on February 29th, neither did it happen on a leap year. But what is interesting is 21 years later on Leap Day, Buddy Holly's glasses were found in a field. But it's not only negative things that happen on a leap day. As we could see, because of our gorilla incidents, good things can happen as well. One of those good things is that in 1940, Hattie McDaniel was the very first Black American to win an Oscar for her role in Gone with the Wind. Another good thing was in 1996, the bloody war that followed the breakup of Yugoslavia ended with the lifting of the siege on Leap Day in Sarajevo. Also in 2004, one of the greatest movies ever made, The Return of the King, tied for first place for most Academy Awards ever. So we see a pattern here. We see a significance to leap days. This could obviously be random information that I'm gathering, and that any day could have this same sort of confirmation bias associated with it. But what's interesting about leap days is there's only about 24 of them every century. That's not a lot of days. It's less than months worth. I find it interesting that historical events have lined up with leap days, and specifically those historical events have involved gorillas. And leap day is looked at differently in a lot of different cultures. It's extremely bad luck in Scottish culture. If you get married in a leap year in Greece, they say that the only way that marriage can end in is divorce. But other cultures look on it more lightheartedly or positively. For example, very popularly in Ireland, a leap year, or leap day specifically, is a day the women are allowed to propose to the men instead. And there have actually been laws in different countries punishing different men for turning down proposals on leap day. It seems like there's something here. It seems like maybe there's just a sort of energy that appears every leap year, especially on every leap day. It would seem that this energy could be used for ill or for good, to change the world for the better or for the worse. I think that that's what happened in May of 2016. I think that for some reason, that leap year was a specifically powerful one. And that event with Harambe was more cosmic than we realize, and set the entire world and universe and reality in a downward trajectory. Now, I'm not saying wonderful good stuff hasn't happened since then. In fact, leap years happen to be exceptionally good years for me, and 2016 and 2020, surprisingly, were two of my favorite years in recent memory. I think that it depends more on how we choose to see the world and what direction we decide to go as a species. Unfortunately, because of the energy transfer and the interdimensional forces at work, I think that a lot of humans chose to look negatively on reality after 2016, with a bottoming out in 2020. But I think 2024 has the opportunity to be better. I think that we can continue the downward trajectory, but I also think that we have the opportunity to start to do something wonderful. And I think that there's precedence for that as well, because something very exciting happened recently. A video from Fort Worth in Texas, the zoo there, has become viral. Maybe you've seen it, but it features yet another gorilla and two female zookeepers that accidentally found themselves inside the enclosure at the same time. If you watch the video, it's extremely tense, including the woman taking the video is praying for the safety of these zookeepers. One is able easily to get through the door, but the other one has to slowly hide behind a tree until the gorilla is distracted so she can get inside. It's an extremely scary moment, and a lot of people watching it were wondering if this was going to be Harambe Part 2. But thankfully, both the zookeepers and the gorilla made it through safely. I find it interesting that this video blew up on leap year. The fact that it became viral now is interesting to me. Also, if it was done before leap year in preparation for it, maybe there's some cosmic force in the universe trying to put right what once went wrong. Now, if we're talking about the significance of names, I think it's interesting that Harambe means working together or communally. You can work together for good things or for bad things. The work produces power and we decide where to put that power. But interestingly enough, the gorilla involved in this recent incident was named Elmo, and Elmo means protector. I don't know if you're convinced, but I thoroughly think gorillas are the protectors of our reality, or maybe one of many. I think that whether that's true or not, every moment gives us an opportunity to take advantage of the future and decide what that kind of future is going to be. Our wills and our brains and our minds and our imaginations are much more powerful than we would ever think. Maybe you and me are the ones who can look at these seemingly random incidents and pull meaning from them in order to do good. Maybe leap year is just a random day on the calendar, but maybe because of the power we give it, we could use it to put right what once went wrong and create the reality that's good for both humans and our gorilla protectors. Thanks for listening. My name is Levi, and this is Outlandish.